Welcome back to What's New with Mead. We're in episode number 69, and I have I don't know that I'm going to call you the king of Facebook Mead groups because you're one of many people of this, but I have one of the biggest owners, admins of a Mead Facebook group with me, Michael Kaiser, here to chat about his mead making experience and what it's like to operate a community of over 100,000 people now. So, Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. And it's been a lot of fun watching your channel progress over the years.
It's definitely
always been a fan.
It's changed a lot. If you go back to those first videos, I was a baby faced. I was a new guy for sure, and so it's been fun. Right. So let's talk about you. People know me; they don't care about me. They want to get to know you. Tell us about yourself, your mead making experience, maybe what got you started.
Well, the thing that got me started in making mead was the Society for Creative Anachronisms. Back in 1978, I went to the East Kingdom War in Coopers Lake, Pennsylvania, and dressed up in armor and beat people with sticks. It's so much fun. It's great.
Yeah.
And when I was there, a lady gave me some mead. She'd made a short mead. It was in an old Mountain Dew bottle, or a used Mountain Dew. Yeah. Plastic one. Back in '78, plastic Mountain Dew bottles were a big thing. So, and I fell in love with the beverage. Oh, I was 18 at the time. So I was just barely old enough to drink alcohol. And it was sweet and tasted like honey. It was slightly fizzy and, made me fart a lot. So I loved it. It was great. One of the things that changed my life was also being in the Society for Creative Anachronisms, making armor. And I would go down to I used to live right outside of DC, and I'd go down to the Library of Congress and look through some of their old books on armor and armor making. And that led me to reading books on blacksmithing. And I started blacksmithing part-time while I was working at a bank in the finance section. And banking in the 80s was crazy. The name of the company changed like 6 times in 4 years.
Oh, geez.
It was pretty awesome. And I had an opportunity to work for myself as a blacksmith full time. And I took it, and I've been working as a blacksmith till about 2020, right after my strokes hit. So, but
that's a cool job.
So the SCA kind of brought me into a couple of different things like mead and blacksmithing and historic recreations, et cetera, et cetera. So first taste of homebrewed mead at SCA events nowadays. So let's see what else. I'm kind of retired. I'm retired. Down to North Carolina. I used to live in Maryland. I was born in Maryland, and it's cold as hell right now. it's even down here on the coast. It's like 29 degrees right now. So it's been very chilly recently. So anyways, okay. So I'm talking about the weather now. Old guys do that when they don't have anything to say.
So you started all these years ago. My question to you is, obviously you've made a lot of mead since then. Do you remember maybe the first few you made?
Yeah,
Were
yeah.
they traditionals? Were they fruited? What'd you end up doing when you started?
I think the first thing that I made was a short mead. It was probably only a week old, using bread yeast, honey, and I don't remember if I had a jug. No, I had a five. It was. I've never made anything less than 5 gallon. Well, less than
Whoa.
3 gallons until
Wow.
last week when I made a. Yeah, I made a sizer that's a 1.25 gallons. Um, so yeah, I started out making 5 gallons at a time, because back then I could get a gallon of honey for $12.
That's pretty good, man.
Um, and it was good honey.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was from the Amish. It was great. And so that's another thing. I've seen the price of honey go up and up and up. It's
Yeah.
always gone up with very few quavers in the progression. But yeah, it was pretty inexpensive to make back then. So I'd front load heavy on meads. Oh no, the first one was kind of light. It was probably turned out between 7 and 8%. So just underneath the BJCP guidelines for a hydromel
Mm-hmm.
uh, or short, and it turned out great. Um, Shared it with a bunch of friends. Didn't really get to bottle it. I brought the carboy to a friend's house, and we just poured it out, and it was
I
great.
thought you were gonna say Mountain Dew bottle
And
to the friend's house. So.
no, no. Um, and then the second one that I made, I dubbed the Orange Blossom Express. I kind of got fancy. I used orange blossom honey, and I also put in orange juice concentrate, frozen concentrate,
Uh-huh.
into the must, and I think there was like 4 cans of orange juice concentrate, water, and at least a gallon of honey. Might have been more.
Wow.
And bottled it when I thought it was done. I did the normal thing. It
Right.
stopped bubbling. It must be
Right.
done. Uh, how we learn. And I bottled it in champagne bottles,
Okay.
and with cages and everything. It was being very fancy. I knew that there was residual sugar left, and I knew that it would probably get fizzy. That was
Mm-hmm.
my hope. It was just a little fizz would be great. First time I opened the first bottle, it had been sitting for about 2 weeks, and pulled it out of the basement, walked outside, opened it up. The cork shot about 40 feet up in the air, and a column of this beautiful
Oh man.
orange mead, a good 12 feet high, shot up
Whoa.
and showered down on me. And I was like, oh, okay. I chilled down the rest of the bottles, and they were still way over
Right.
carbonated, but figured out how to open them, when they were even more chilled, and drank it up. And it was really good. And I think I put the recipe for that in the file section of the Mead group.
Yeah.
I think I
Huh.
did. I'll have to check.
Well, let's talk about that. So, one really cool thing, one thing I really loved learning about you, kind of behind the scenes. I know this sounds creepy that I've been learning about you behind the scenes, but I'm part of the Mead Facebook group. I'm a part of a couple of them, but I am a part of the largest one, which is the just quote Mead Facebook group, if anyone's interested. And it's been cool to see as somebody I would consider myself a mead advocate, obviously with my kind of job and what I'm doing here, see that group specifically go from what I remember like 4 or 5 years ago being like maybe 50,000 people or something like that in that realm.
This time last year we had 28,000 people.
Yeah, to now 112 or
13.
something. Yeah, like
Yeah.
an insane number of people who have all of a sudden found interest in mead. So I've really liked watching you really gracefully introduce people into mead, because as I peruse those questions and comments, you are like probably 5 of every 6 you have been nice enough to comment on, and or even all of them, and say, hey, welcome, here's a great place to find some resources. And there are 50 to 100 posts a day, as I'm seeing. It is busy. So tell us about, obviously, the start of that group. It's an older group, but it hit its stride. I remember you told me a little bit about the backstory, that it was previously owned by someone else, and then they kind of passed it along. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Chris Weber started it. I had initially was on the Mead Lovers Digest, which was a bulletin board email type thing back in the 90s, early 90s. And when Facebook started, I started the Mead Lovers on Facebook. I think that was 2008 or 2006. I don't remember. I should have checked. Anyway,
Sounds right to me.
yeah. And we had that group for like a year, 2 years, and got up to like 300 people.
Mm-hmm.
And the Mead group was already on Facebook. They had started in 2007, I think. Excuse me. And the owner contacted me and asked me if we wanted to merge the two groups. And I was like, yeah, it seems, because they had like a couple of admins. They had maybe 1,500 people, and we had 300 people. So I was like, yeah. So I announced to everyone that we were shutting down. Everybody should migrate over to Mead. And we did that. And he made me an admin. And that lasted for like 10 years. In that 10 years, the owner only posted like 3 times. Was active doing admin things, accepting people and posts and stuff, but really had never had any interaction with anybody in 10 years.
Wow.
So when groups started to become more popular back in like 2018 or so on Facebook, we lost my train of thought. This will happen.
Oh, you're good. So
yeah.
you guys had merged, and did you see immediate growth? Like, obviously, we just talked about a moment ago. As of last year, you're at 20,000. Did you see the growth? Was it steady? Has it been a roller coaster?
Yeah, it from 2018 to maybe 2020, 2021, like for 3 years there, we got maybe 1,000 people each year.
Uh-huh.
So, it was a very gradual climb. Then I think it was 2021, somebody made a post about Skyrim Mead.
Oh, yeah.
And that went viral. It was shared everywhere and went viral amongst the Skyrim people. and the mead people and brewers in general.
Uh-huh.
And mead started to pick up more. And we started getting a lot more people joining.
Mm-hmm.
Then, with the advent of mead posts on TikTok and YouTube Shorts,
Yeah.
a lot of people had their exposure through those two medium as well. And it's amazing. It only takes one or two short videos for people to just inundate us with requests to join.
Yeah.
There were, it was back in June or July of this year, there was a video that went viral about mead. I think it was Golden Hive.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, that did it. And we had about 400 people per day joining
Wow.
for
Yeah.
for a good 2 or 3 weeks.
That's
And
pretty
I
good.
I found more people to do adminning for us, because initially it was only myself, Rebecca Gallo, and Lise Brower, and we hired on Willie and Chris and Dave, and I'm forgetting about someone. Oh, jeez, Christopher. Yeah, to help us out with accepting people, and which everybody was doing their best, and we just we vet people. So we
Right.
don't just hit accept all. We
Right.
always, there's a question people have to answer, which is, why do you want to join me? And that question kind of knocks out all the bots.
Right.
Bots can't handle questions like that, which is how do you feel type thing.
Right. Right. Yeah.
It's kind of the Turing test
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
people. Anyways, and they also have to agree to the rules. So there's a two-step acceptance thing. And if they don't do one or the other, we don't accept them. And a lot of times we'll also look at people's profiles to make sure that they're real,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they've only had their
Profile for like a
profile.
month. Yeah. There's
Yeah,
and
for a couple of months or whatever, we'll go ahead and check out their profiles. But most, it's pretty much easy to do. The administration side is pretty much easy to do. The hard part is answering questions
mm-hmm.
and directing people to the various resources that we set up,
Right.
and kind of like helping people understand that, yes, you can just sort of mix everything up and forget about it for a while,
Right.
or you can do these other types of more complicated procedures in order to make mead.
Yeah.
And these are the benefits that you get with doing something like that.
So would you say that like, you talked about the short form content, YouTube shorts, TikTok coming through.
Right.
Would you say that those things have benefited the mead making community as a large? Obviously it's brought people into it. Now the question is has it really made us grow beyond just people?
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are just curious. It comes by on their feed, and they're just curious of what mead is. I'd say about 20% of the people who are answering the question are saying, I don't even know what mead is.
Right.
And I'm just trying to join to see what it is. And a lot of people, there's a lot of moonshiners for some reason.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, that have joined. And there must have been, I think there was an episode of either moonshiners or there's a guy that distills stuff, like will distill anything. Who distills beer.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I've seen. I think he's probably
Yeah,
a YouTuber. Yeah. Yep.
yeah, he's got a very big following, and he did a commercial meadery, made some mead that they couldn't sell,
Mm.
and he distilled that, and
Mm.
that episode went viral as well. So
Right.
we got a lot of moonshiners in, and unfortunately, because of the laws in the United States, we don't allow discussion of distilling
Right.
in the group, and they're pretty good about not doing it because we tell them up front as part of the rules that it's, we don't discuss distillation. But it's been pretty interesting to see the moonshiners take on mead, and to see them kind of like, I don't know, relax their palate a bit and
Yeah.
and make a mead that they like. It's
Right.
some of these guys would never touch wine, because they're all manly backwoods men, making moonshine in the hills. But give them some mead, have them make their own mead, and
Yeah.
they really love it. So it's been interesting.
Before we, a little bit before we started the podcast, we were kind of talking about, you've made mead for a long time, and you've seen the progression of it grow, especially in change. And you commented on that was back when raisins were nutrients and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So obviously, you've seen a lot of these changes actively over time through the Facebook group. What are some of those things? I guess a better question: are there any of these new, I don't know how to put it, new processes, new bits of information that we've gotten about mead making that you don't quite subscribe to, or for the most part, have you followed suit with a lot of the I'm going to call it new tech? I don't know a better term for it.
Yeah. I'll make a confession. I only started using a hydrometer about 3 years ago.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because I've been making mead for over 40 years.
Right.
It's like making pancakes. You don't measure. You grab some stuff, you mix it together, and you make pancakes.
Right.
That's kind of what I did with mead. But I found that it comes in extremely handy for quite a few things. Especially if you want to like back sweeten to a certain degree and replicate that. That's, it's an essential piece of equipment. And the same with nutrients. I didn't start using them until maybe, I don't know, about 10 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. And before that, you look at some of my posts from, back in 2010 or something like that. I'm talking about using different types of raisins for the nutrients.
I'm only laughing because I feel like I'm laughing because I feel like I've been down the road of testing it and stuff for so long that I arrived on the mead scene at a weird time in that it was like the turning of all of these things. Like people were just starting to really look into Ken Schramm's book more. It was really gaining popularity, and there were these the modern Meadmakers group was starting to roll around, and blah blah blah. And so I feel like I hit it at that perfect stride of like all this new information and technology was coming my way. Now, I didn't necessarily adapt to all of it super quickly. I still was behind the scenes on some of it, but it was really interesting to be a part of that as it kind of grew. So as you've seen those things, do you feel like because there's so much new technology, I'm going to keep using that term, new technology, that the Facebook questions you get are people more informed when they're starting, or are we at the same level when everybody starts asking the same questions?
Because of the way the information is accessed for most people, like they do a Google search for easy mead recipe. And one of the first, if not the first, is grow, forage, something, I forget. And it's a bad recipe that talks about raisins being nutrients and bottling after 3 weeks. Not, racking or anything, just bottle it after 3 weeks.
Right.
You're good. And nowadays people are getting AI created bad recipes. Because AI is just farming information that has already been posted.
Right.
And 80% of the information that's already been posted and is old and is not copyrighted is old bad information, where raisins are nutrients and you can use 2 to 4 pounds of honey per gallon. Right. And so there's bad information out there, but there's also good information. Mm-hmm. There are places on YouTube that you can go to, your channel, one of them, that people can learn how to do a simple recipe that uses modern techniques to produce something that has very few off flavors, that finishes clean, and doesn't have to age for a year. Right. And you can drink it. And that was another thing. I mean, back when I was making mead, I would make like 5 gallons and then forget about it for a year.
Yeah.
And rack it off a couple of times and then forget about it for a year. And then come back and maybe, play with the acids or, add, fruits or whatever. But meads usually took years.
Right. Yeah.
Now with the advent, of nutrients and temperature control and stuff like that, you can have a beautiful product like Bray Denard and his Bray's 1 month mead. You can have a really nice product in a month,
right?
If you follow it to the T. Mm-hmm. So, but
I remember that too. When I first started, I was even this is 7 years ago when I started. That was the thing. It was like every forum, every bit of information I found was like, don't even think about drinking it before 6 months. Like you're going to regret it big time. And I remember being terrified of that. I was like, what do you mean? And so I followed suit, but like looking back on it now, it is a little bit silly. I do think that's one of those things that I hope that information will kind of just vanish over time as we do dive deeper with these modern techniques. And I don't necessarily know that people always are subscribing to the modern techniques. I think you probably see that a lot too. Being in a group of 115 or 114,000 people, you see so many different variations of mead making processes. So how do you balance that whenever you have people who are, I feel like the biggest fork is people who are, what's the terminology I'm looking for? The whole natural versus unnatural. If you use sorbate, metasulfide, or blah blah blah. So how do you balance those scales in such a large group?
You just present the information and be consistent. Mm-hmm. And it's the way that the information is portrayed, or like someone will say, I don't want to use chemicals to clear my mead.
Right.
And I'll tell them, well, none of these findings that we use, sparkloid, super clear, bentonite, none of them are chemicals.
Right.
They're mechanical ionic attractants.
Yeah.
And they act together and drop things out of suspension. And they're left behind when you rack. So you're not using a chemical, you're using tiny little machines to pull all this stuff out of suspension. And people are like, oh, well, I didn't know that. I'm like, bentonite is a volcanic clay.
Right. Yeah. That's literally from the earth.
Yeah. And I break down on some of the mead tips. I've published, I think it's like 26 different basic blurbs of information on like findings, making a traditional, making a melomel, adding spices, blah, blah, blah. It's just basics
Right.
that people, if they read them,
Yeah, right.
will be much more informed. But it's consistency. You need to be consistent. And some people don't want to, well, some people will say that they want to be organic. And like you said, just dirt, bentonite, it's clay. That's pretty organic. That's pretty much more organic than anything that you're going to be using. And nutrients themselves, they're salts.
Mm-hmm.
They're, it's like potassium metabisulfite. The potassium is just a carrier.
Mm-hmm.
And potassium is actually something that our bodies need.
Mm-hmm. And
unless you have certain medical conditions and you know about potassium, you don't use potassium. But so potassium metabisulfite produces ionic potassium and sulfur dioxide gas when it mixes with the water in your mead.
Right.
And all it does is it scavenges free oxygen that's in solution and changes it to sulfur dioxide. And it's no worse than using table salt.
Mm.
And it disperses rather quickly, because some of the older recipes will tell you to sulfite things, wait 24 hours, and then add your yeast.
Right.
And because after 24 hours, it's basically evaporated. It's not even going to leave any trace.
Right.
So if I explain to people in terms that they can understand or at least look up and be consistent, I think I kind of win them over sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
The people that will be won over. There are some people that won't be changed, will not have their views changed. And that's fine too,
Do you have a lot of people, I do in my comments every once in a while, who are like, well, the Vikings didn't have XYZ,
yeah, we have that a lot. I always say Vikings didn't have computers bouncing signals off of satellites, and that's how we're talking to each other right now. Ragnar, But, the Vikings didn't have it, but they used things and didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
Like they used, whoever started the magic stick lore.
Oh, the yeast stick thing? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. And there's really no substantial information to back that up, the whole magic stick thing, magic bag as well. But most people have been using barm, which is basically just like a sourdough starter, or the scum from the top of other brewing, beers,
Yeah.
lines, etc. And it's all just a mixture of live and dead yeasts, which is basically nutrients like fermento is just dead yeast
Right.
that's
Yep.
been broken down under different various circumstances, but there's all the building blocks are there for the yeast to assimilate. Um, eh,
Well, like that's my thing is like the Viking idea is interesting. It's the cultural side,
yeah,
and I understand if you have a rich heritage of that or in your family, like there's nothing wrong with that. But what I don't love
right,
is whenever people are not willing to try something that might be helpful, and
right,
especially when you're talking about a lot of these recipes, I feel like are more complex, and people always run into problems. And I'm sure you see it all the time because, again, like I see you commenting on people's posts, like when they ask a question about, hey, my brew has done this, what do I do? Or I want to do this. Like you've already answered all
right.
these questions, but there's just so many like issues people run into because they're not willing to try something different. And so I hope they will maybe try the modern practice and see how it goes. But I do
Yeah,
love
and,
I love your willingness to help these people because I don't know if you know this, but it must be 4 years ago now. I had started my own little Facebook group that was kind of intended to be partially a way for me to talk to people with my channel, but then also a way to just like
oh
open
yeah,
up a Facebook group. And so I'd started one. And just
yeah,
the season of life, the year or two that I was trying to head it up and talk to people, I was overwhelmed by the amount of things. So I can't imagine you having to respond to hundreds of comments a day. And you talked about you have like I don't want to say script, but you have like some pre-typed out things. Do you just keep those like in a Google Doc and you're like, oh, here's the situation, boop, like
no.
just grab them from there?
Unfortunately, there's only one copy and paste, which is called the Mead Welcome, and
Mm,
it's basically when people say, "Hi, I just joined. Do you have a recipe? And can someone give me a list of equipment?"
right.
And this basically the Mead Welcome tells them, welcome to the group. Um, Here are the different areas that you can access within the group that'll give you exact information. There's the
Yeah.
guides, files, the introduction to Mead, the Mead tips. Basically, if anybody took the time to sit down and read all of those, they know as much as I do or
Hmm.
as much as you do.
Right. Yeah.
Because basically, we just save all the good stuff and make it available for people.
Yeah. Well,
But
you're getting so many people from, like you said, from TikTok and YouTube Shorts where they saw a 30-second spiel from somebody
right,
saying, I'll say sometimes it's easy to just say, hey, this is easy, go for it, and not really talk about all the hardships you're going to experience. So you get
yeah,
all these
yeah,
people who are short-term goldfish brain who don't really read, honestly, and now they're like, wait, I joined this group and now I have to read in order to figure out what
right,
to do. It's like,
right, right.
yes.
Yeah, that'll happen. I mean, but you can either put the work in
Hmm.
or just have someone tell you what to do. And I've never just wanted people just to follow, just follow this recipe. That's all you need to do. A lot of people have joined lately that have gotten the craft brew kit,
Uh-huh. Yep.
and I wish the instructions were better, and I wish they included um, like a 2 gallon plastic pail to do
Yeah.
your primary in, and then look at the beautiful, um, you know, custom embossed glass jug and
Right.
do your aging in that. And if they had, those things, and I go through one of my mead tips and tell people in a lighthearted way
Right.
what to expect from the kit, what to get to help things along and make things easier for you. And you have to present it in a lighthearted way so as not to feel a little too heavy-handed, because people don't want that. This is, like you said, goldfish brain, but it's the nature of the format. It's like a 30-second or even less video of someone making mead, sloshing, different various things into a container, and then calling it mead. They never see the progression, what to do after, basically the aftercare of your mead. And
they don't have to wait the weeks and weeks. And there's they get that instant satisfaction of like, oh, that's what I'm going to get. And then it's
right. And then they get down to it, and it's like, it's a little bit more complicated, as anything is. It's like making a grilled cheese. If you've never made a grilled cheese before, it's complicated. You got to heat up the pan beforehand. Nobody told me to heat up the pan beforehand. Yeah, and butter on the inside and the outside. Who knows? It's like
right.
People don't know what they don't know because it's new.
Right.
And I approach, or we all do, all the admins approach teaching as people don't know what they don't know. Be consistent, and don't get too detailed unless people seem to be reciprocal. They want to be more informed. But we just try and keep it simple.
One of those things that's interesting that I've seen is, as somebody who publishes a lot of recipes, I feel like most of the time, and I think this is true of the mead community at large, the mead community doesn't like to, not necessarily follow the rules, but doesn't like to live in the sandbox that might be given to them. So I have a lot of people who will say like, hey, I made your such and such recipe, but I changed X, Y, and Z. Right. And it'll be like 3 integral parts of the recipe. And I'm like, well, you didn't really make the recipe. you took the idea of it, which is not a bad thing. And I don't want to, if people do that, that's great. But what I'm noticing is, because we like to pave our own path, a lot of people end up struggling or hitting a roadblock and going, wait, I didn't know this was going to happen. And it's like, well, you went a different road. You took a detour.
A good example is Joe's Ancient Orange Mead, which has been around as a recipe since 2006.
Wow.
Joe Mattioli first put it together, I think, in 2002, but he did a lot of testing and actually published it in like 2006. And everybody looks at it as, oh, Joe's Ancient Orange Mead. It must be an ancient recipe. And it's only, it's a few things.
20
2006 is ancient. And we get a lot of people that say, oh, yeah, I did Joe's Ancient Orange, but instead of bread yeast, I used, EC1118. And I didn't use oranges, I used tangerines.
Yeah.
Well, okay, and then it finishes dry as a popcorn fart and really, really tart.
Right.
It's like, well, yeah, because the original recipe takes into account that it's going to stall.
Yeah.
Because the bread yeast really doesn't like to get up over 7 or 11% alcohol, and then it'll peter out, and all those excess sugars will balance out the bitterness of the orange rind, which you have in there. And the spices tend to cover some of the sort of rocket fuel um, complex alcohols that are produced.
Yeah.
And if you don't have all that, it finishes really dry, really high alcohol. You know, sometimes they can get up to it's like 16, 17% alcohol with a Joe's Ancient Orange,
Oh yeah.
depending on how much water. So a lot of people don't follow the directions when it says to top off with water.
Mm-hmm.
One that, you know, people miss a lot, and then they end up with a very high alcohol mead that's
Right.
really hot and that has to age for longer. So,
Right.
but I it's fun to see experimentation. For me, it's kind of fun to figure out where people went
Yeah.
wrong
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or where people varied from the initial recipe, or what they did and didn't do. It's like, well, it's not fermenting. Well, where do you have it? Well, it's in the basement. How cold is the basement? Well, the basement's like 50 degrees. It's like, bring it upstairs, warm it up. Um, there's just sort of Sherlock Holmesing
Yeah.
of what's going on with what they have and figuring out and then helping people along. I don't give people a hard time because they put it in the basement because that's probably the only place that they had room.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
They never added nutrients because they didn't know about them. So just kind of like hold people's hands and say, okay, you know, you
Yeah.
didn't do this, you can do this, and you can take some bare copper wire and you can swirl it around inside your mead to get rid of the rotten egg smell. And they kind of look at me like I'm, you know, it's some kind of weirdo. And I said, well,
Just
no.
try
And
it
then
first. Yeah.
I explained to them the chemical reaction and what's happening. And they're like, oh, okay. A lot of people didn't take basic science courses when they were growing up. And that's a telling, um, it just says a lot about the educational system
Yeah.
of the United States. Unfortunately, oh, that's right. You're a teacher. There you go. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I live in that. Don't worry. I know exactly
Yeah,
what you mean. Well,
yeah,
I don't necessarily feel like experimentation, like again, like you're saying, experimentation is not bad. And I mean, if you look at my channel, I do a lot of serious things, and then I'll
right.
do a lot of just goofy things. And there's like, you know, the mead world is supposed to be fun. Where I always just have to laugh a little bit is when people run away from a recipe and then wonder why things didn't necessarily go the way that everybody said they would. And it's like, well, you didn't
Right,
quite do the same thing that was told for you to do.
right, right.
So as you, I guess, as you've been answering questions and as you have run into the same thing over and over again, do you feel like, well, I don't know how to phrase this. Do you feel like people are actually learning pretty actively through this community, or do you feel like because it's gotten so big that it kind of gets out of hand? Because I've noticed that sometimes when things get so big that suddenly information, people are just throwing out their opinions all the time. I see that on groups where it's like, has anybody done this? And the person who's made maybe one or two brews says, oh yeah, I've done this, and
Right.
this is what you should do. Do you feel like there's ever any issues with that when it comes to a large group?
There are, and I try, and the other admins try to read everything. We scan everything, we try to read everything, but we can't be there all the time in every single one of the discussions because I think our average postings for the end of December were like 150 posts per day.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And to read through them is like a full-time job itself. But we try and look for people who are giving bad advice, and we'll devote some time to actually not admonish them, but to educate them and show them it's not just us saying this. This is all this information that points to what we're saying. Okay, we're not saying this just to, hound on you, but there's a better way to do it, and more people have done it this way.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way. I love that. You guys have done a fantastic job of welcoming so many people, and I'm constantly impressed every time I go on there. In fact, just now I was like, you mentioned how many posts you get a day, and in the time that we've done this podcast, there have been about 4 posts of rather large amounts of information, not even talking about all of the other comments and the other things on other things from the rest of the day. So y'all are doing a fantastic job, and I hope that you guys feel encouraged by the warm welcome you give these new mead makers. It is a daunting task. Just myself doing YouTube comments, I get overwhelmed. So I cannot fathom hundreds and hundreds of posts a week that you get.
It's great to see someone bottling their first mead, and it's got beautiful color. It's got beautiful clarity. They've corked it, and the cork is at the right height.
Right.
It's filled to the right height on the inside of the bottle. It just brings a tear to one's eye.
I was going to say that. The fill level.
And this is my first one. This is what it looks like, and it tastes good. I love this hobby, and it's like, that's why we do it, because someone has made something, and it's also the ones that look like mud that are in, a mason jar. I took these to my friend's house. Everybody drank it. I need to make more.
Right.
I love those too. And that's the thing. It's one of the reasons why I started educating people and teaching people and doing classes, is because someday I'll go to a party and people will give me mead rather than me taking mead to a party.
They'll pay it back. So there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's awesome.
It's happened a couple of times. And one of the times it was at a wedding, and there was a really bad version of Joe's Ancient Orange Mead. And but I didn't make it, and it was fun to drink someone else's mead. So.
Yeah, man. Well, I really am super excited to see the continual growth of the Mead Facebook group, and I lurk every once in a while. I post, and it's one of those where I try to comment some when I can, but it is tough when there's so much information. So it's cool to see all of that as it's going along, though.
Yeah, it's hard to. We do try and tag some of the more professionals when certain questions come up, to just sort of give backbone to our information. It's like, oh, okay, well, this person also agrees with us. So, but it's been a lot of fun, and maybe we'll do another interview when we hit 200,000.
Oh, probably. I mean, that's coming up. That's gonna be quick.
Yeah, I know.
That's crazy.
Probably by my birthday in June, we'll probably hit 200,000. So who knows?
Man, so one thing, what's gonna be so cool about this interview, especially in a podcast, is because the Mead Facebook group is so large, and I have lots of people within my own world on my channel, or people who listen to the channel who are in the group. They've undoubtedly seen your name. They've seen Michael somewhere in here as you've been responding. So I hope that people have been able to put a face to the name, and it's been fun to get to chat with you. And
thanks.
I just think it's super cool to meet people face to face. The internet is such a fun thing, and it's also so weird to have communication with people that you've never talked to and face to face. So it's fun
bizarre.
to get to do this.
That's I met my fiance online.
Oh,
back in an AOL chat room.
Cool.
Back in '96. So yeah, you can pick up a lot of weird stuff online.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, you can get a lot of. It's getting worse.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Well,
I think we're done.
Yeah, I'm going to. I'll be putting Facebook group stuff information in the description of this. But Michael, thank you for your time and investing in the Mead community. And if anyone wants to talk to Michael, you know where to find him. But thanks for your time, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Take it easy.
Hey, cheers.